Hey everybody, welcome to Hugging the Cactus and the Keep Going podcast. I'm Andy Signor, and I'm so excited for this conversation because this is somebody I'd been talking to online for a while, and I didn't really even know who I was speaking to. Sometimes you're online talking to people and you just trust, because you feel a good vibe and you're like, well, yeah, we're believing in the same cause. This person, we're in this. There's a little bit of that finding that trust, but you sort of go with it and you go, well, I've seen what they've posted, so they must be legit. I'm so happy to finally put a face to the name. Everybody meet Jax.
Hello.
Jax.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Let me set up who you are because people are gonna be like, who? What? Who is he talking to?
Yeah, it's all good.
So this is important because for those subscribers to my Popcorn Planet channel, I've been very deep into the justice for Johnny Depp topic. It's one that's important to me because I've followed the evidence. I've been watching the case. I've heard the tapes, and for somebody who has been through a similar wrongfully accused situation, it's become something I've been very vocal about. More and more I learn about it. And so Jax is somebody who's been out there fighting the good fight as well, trying to help clear Johnny's name with the evidence, with the facts. And so that's who Jax is. And so the reason Jax is here is, one, we share a common interest in this Johnny Depp topic, which I'm so excited to get into how you found out about it, how you got involved. But What really triggered this conversation is someone tried to dox you, Jax, right? Someone tried to basically, you have an anonymous sort of, account out there that you sort of kept, not just cause. We'll talk about that too. But somebody online, a fan of AH, as we call her, it seems, that fan base, or who knows what it is, but someone against the movement seems to wanted to sort of expose you and put you out there, and sort of it brought up an interesting topic of one, bravo for being here and showing your face and not bowing down to these people who tried to sort of use that against you in a way. And it spurred this topic I want to talk about with you, which is how not to be afraid of speaking truth. So that's what we're here to talk about. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
As I try to recap it for the audience, is there anything you want to add there to sort of clarify or change for me?
No, I mean, you got it pretty much right. Just been fighting the fight there on Twitter for a long time. And I think people, there's obviously forces at play, people that don't like us for any type of reason. And somebody went snooping around and linked my Instagram to somebody else and, got out. But as I said, when I initially tweeted on the day that it happened, I'd never been hiding. So it's really not a big deal.
Right, and it was amazing. I can't find that. I should have had it open, but what was amazing about it all is you triggered this sort of whole, and others have done this too, to give credit where it's due. But
yeah, of course,
a lot of fans, not a bot sort of initiative happened with a lot of amazing, beautiful people, supporters of Johnny, coming forward to really put their face where, to put their money where the mouth is, right? To really to put it out there to say we're not bots, because the biggest thing about this whole Justice for Johnny thing is one of the issues in the whole lawsuit is the fact that Amber's lawyers keep trying to say, oh, well, these are all robots. These are all these aren't real people who think this way. They're just Johnny's fans or robots, and we shouldn't pay close attention to them. But the reality is it's a lot of victims and a lot of real people who have done the homework to find this out. So I wanted to make sure we talked and inspired this, hopefully inspire others out there to not be afraid. When you believe in something, you want to put yourself out there. Don't let the haters or the toxic ones try to get to you to do that. So let's get right there. I mean, start off with me. Like, how did you get involved in the Justice for Johnny campaign? The movement. What was it that brought you to that first?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've been following it since 2016. First of all, I've been a fan, obviously, of Johnny's art for a very long time, and obviously became a filmmaker and all this. So I've been following him for quite a few years. But when everything first happened in 2016, there was this feeling like something doesn't smell quite right here, and just continued to follow it from there on out. And of course, things got crazier and crazier and bigger until finally he did sue her, and that became the explosion. And at that point was when I went to Twitter and started talking about it over there, which turned into this whole thing. So that's how that all pretty much went down.
Got it. So, I mean, the case obviously has made it, a lot more people have to come and discover because of the case, because of the evidence, because of the accusations and everything else. Was there a point, and please be honest, because a lot of times I don't get to talk about this with people who are there. Was there a point where you were sort of careful to be like, well, I don't really know. Did he do it? Did he not do it? Did you do your due diligence to sort of try to really pay attention, or did you pretty much give him the benefit of the doubt from the beginning?
No, it took me a few days. It definitely didn't take me a very long time, but anybody who knows me from Twitter knows that my brother is actually also there with us. He's a physician, um, and so I come from this sort of family of medical people, and sort of watching it go down from the beginning. As I said, it just didn't smell right. The things didn't add up, didn't look right. Um, and so it was a little bit, no, I it wasn't about giving him the benefit of the doubt. It just was inherently clear to me that it was not true.
Yeah. I mean, for me, and just because I want to ask some tough questions so people don't think we're just
Yeah,
two Johnny
absolutely.
stands here just being like, oh, yeah, I'm not a Johnny stan. Like, I'm a fan of his movies. I've liked him as
Right,
a person. I never would have guessed any of this would have been the case. So I went in with a little bit of
right,
skepticism as well of just like, well, it just doesn't sound like him. The limited experiences I've had, I've met him from afar a couple times, very like briefly, and I've known people who've worked with him, and he's
yeah,
so quiet and like kind and like it's just not. Now I know where everyone's different in the private life, so I try to be sort of like, well, what's the deal? But for me, it was the tapes. Like when I heard those tapes,
yeah,
like it was a very clear. I mean, it just I've known women like that, people like that, and she came across in such a way and said such things that I was horrified to really hear the
absolutely,
extent of it because I think most people had seen and maybe shrugged off, oh well, they're just in a toxic relationship. Clearly, this wasn't good for
right,
either of them. Get out. And I think some people still are trying to say that, but once we were
right,
able to be a fly on the wall and hear the audio, it became so clear to me. And then obviously I dug deeper and found evidence and everything else, but found more of the evidence and her lies and such. But I imagine those tapes are pretty eye opening for you as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, what I had been following the case up to that point anyhow, and so reading everything that he had already filed in Virginia, and also kind of looking through the Sun case, what was available there, and so there was already this picture of where he was saying, no, she did this and she did that, and she's tried to turn it all around, and so there was already this idea that something very bad had happened that was the opposite of what she was trying to sell. But yes, when the tapes came out, of course it was like nuclear. She's just there yelling at him for running away the whole time and admitting to all this manner of harm upon him. And
Yeah, I mean,
awful.
and just we have to be careful of our words. I coached her before, but
Exactly.
yes, the manner of harm is a very good way to put it. But it
Yes.
was worse than that. But yeah, it's crazy to me. So yeah, that once that all, it seemed like he finally got some support. But to get to this
Yes.
topic at hand, it's still in town in Hollywood at least because you're a filmmaker. I forgot to mention it up top.
Yeah.
Jax has made a movie and congratulations for getting it down.
I did.
Day
Thank you.
13, starring Martin Kove of Cobra Kai, Karate. I
Yes.
mean,
We love
hello,
Marty.
how amazing! So you're a filmmaker. You're out in Hollywood,
Yes, sir.
and so
Yeah.
you were kind of afraid to put your, if it's fair to say, you were nervous because not everyone in Hollywood is open to being not judgmental and rushing to conclusions. It seems like, I mean, in my experience, a lot of people in Hollywood, they sort of go, where am I allowed to go? And did you
Yeah.
have a little bit of that fear of just sort of being afraid to really open up about your thoughts on this, worrying some people might think, oh, well, how dare you support him because I read
Right.
this?
Only for a little while, only at the very beginning. After a while, after running around town more and talking to more people, it became pretty apparent that everybody knew what was up. Um, so no, not for a very long time. Only for probably a short period at the beginning.
Right,
Was a
because
little
it's,
bit
but
like
it,
because it was like up in the air still. People didn't know
right.
where to stand.
And sometimes it's like politics. You don't want to bring up politics or
Yeah,
religion to certain
exactly.
people. So you don't, even though they
Yeah,
agree, once you talk about it, they're like, oh yeah, no, I've worked with Johnny. He's great. It's still like, there's a little bit of that worry, right? Of, oh gosh, someone's going to think I might be not in the in the wrong group think that they're going to cancel me and push me out. At least that's what my experience is these days in Hollywood.
yeah. No, I'm not really worried about it. I have not encountered anyone like that. Pretty much everyone that I talk to is like, she's the evil one.
Well, good, because I think that a lot of people aren't as confident, and I think I've gotten more confident in my time as I've left Hollywood and been canceled and all the things I've gone through. I've learned that it's like to not be afraid of thoughts because it's important to put out to be genuine, right? To say what you really feel and what you
Yeah,
think.
absolutely, 100%.
Because then people, if you're wrong, the good people can help to correct or educate you
Yes,
when you are
right.
wrong. And so to me, it's like if you don't go out there and share what you think civilly, we can't have
Yes,
the civil discourse to actually find what's real and what's not. Instead, it feels like a
right.
lot of people are out there just saying, well, no, he must have done this because believe all people. But
Yeah.
Sadly, the reality is there's a lot of people who aren't good people who have used movements to their benefit. And
Yeah.
hearing the audio and stuff, it seems like that's absolutely something that's happening here.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
what is your advice to people out there who maybe don't have the confidence that maybe they obviously you got, and obviously we have now? Why do you think? What would you say to people who are afraid to step up, either for Johnny or anybody that they believe in?
Honestly, just not to be afraid, because there will be more people than you realize who stand with you, and who will support you. And anyone who doesn't deserves the chance to be educated on whatever the topic may be. And if they still don't at the end, then it's their loss at the end of the day.
So, what do you say to people who are sort of casually following this case as an example and sort of just flippantly assume things about Johnny? How do we help them understand that we're not just stands here, that they should do some more homework to realize that a guy's entire livelihood is being thrown under the bus?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is just to look a little bit deeper and to really realize that women are just as capable of doing bad things as men are. And in this case in particular, I would advise them to really look into her claims. That's sort of what I've been championing lately, is for everyone to read exactly what it is that she claims out of the UK court, and then look at the supporting evidence for those claims, because it's not a match.
Right. That's a good place to go to start this conversation, because it's like, exactly, you got to sort of know, what am I being accused of specifically, right? And if those
Right.
stories change, and is there evidence
Right.
to break that, to back up that story? And
Right.
again, the frustrations for me in following the case and then seeing the judge's verdict,
Yeah.
it's like so frustrating, because you're like, did you pay
Very
attention,
disgusting.
Judge? Did you like
Yeah.
what do you mean you're not going to factor this or that? And he really didn't. Amber has now been caught in numerous lies, and Adam Waldman, who, whatever I mean, there's a lot, they're now trying to like defame and take him out as well, but the reality is he
Yeah.
keeps dropping facts and truth of just like, well, no, you didn't give the charity, and the judge made that a big point of his verdict, which is, well,
Yeah.
she's not a gold digger because she went after the money. But the reality is, now that you dig deeper and actually uncover the truth, and that she is capable of lying, as a lot of people are, you realize
all
she's
over
a
the place.
despicable person who had the money in her bank account.
Yep.
And then didn't give it to the sick children. I mean, it's infuriating to me.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, she withheld $3.5 million from these sick kids at the LA Children's Hospital. I just can't.
And then she has fans out there that go, or that get toxic and just believe her, because, let's be honest, they're in every fandom and every celebrity. There are blind sheep fans who will follow and do whatever they say. And I think if I'm going to give one criticism, I've seen a couple in the fandom where it's like they're so emotionally invested that sometimes they're not being completely unbiased about it. Because to me, what's important in this case are the facts, are the evidence, not just our feelings and our emotional, worries for Johnny, which they exist too, but we got to make sure we don't seem like crazy stans of Johnny.
Absolutely.
And in fact, it's interesting, because I had somebody, I had been so busy, and I made a video about like, Johnny fans support, support him, or Johnny fans stand up or something. And I heard word that like, well, no, we don't like that term, because we're not. We're supporters. And it was interesting. And Open Mads, and it was a valid criticism. And I sort of was like, no, all right, that's fair, because I do think it's true. I'm not a fan. We all are fans, right?
Right.
But I think it's important to show that, no, we are supporters here to really get to the truth of this. And if there's some jaw dropping thing that opens my eyes and shows, wow, Johnny shouldn't have done that. Look, as frustrating as that's going to be, I'll be the first person to report that as well. But we got to go off of what we have in our hands, and there's no evidence against him, right?
No, none whatsoever. And that's what people don't understand. They're like, well, first of all, they say she won the UK case. No, she didn't. The tabloid did.
Yeah.
But also, they take that. You have to look at what the evidence is. There is no evidence that points to him ever being aggressive or anything like that. As I said, read the claims and then look at the evidence that goes with the claims.
Right. And there's stuff, what they also, the judge is sort of, because he drank and stuff, which she had her own substance problems as well. Let's be fair. They both sort of did. He sort of just rushed to assume, well, that must have mean he did it. And it's like, that one and one don't go together like that. That doesn't mean that. That's not proof of that. And so it's frustrating to see that. So I mean, what do you think? Beyond even just the issue of Johnny,
Sure.
Why do you think it is some people just refuse to cover stories that like this? Because do you think it's because they don't want to be wrong? Do you think there's a little bit of that of just like, well, I don't want to do the homework and I don't want to be wrong because clearly this is a heavy case. What do you think it is?
Well, it depends on what you're. Are you talking about the media?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
far as why they
sure. There's the media, and there's just this people in general. I think there's a lot of casual people who are like, I don't want to get invested in this fight.
Well, I think that part of the problem is that she came out so heavy-handedly in 2016 with this thing, and people, of course, in the Me Too era, the whole Harvey thing was exploding at that time. Also, they, of course, jumped to have her back, and now it's very difficult. It's very difficult for humans to admit when they're wrong. And coming to the realization that you've backed the wrong horse through this race is going to be hard, but eventually they're going to have to do it because it's getting to a point where everyone's getting backed into a corner and the truth is really out and still coming.
Yeah, facts. What about? But let's talk about the media then as well, because you bring it up. I mean, the media is just abhorrent right now in their support of him.
Yeah.
And that Hollywood Reporter piece, written by someone who has done puff pieces for Amber, if you really like go and do the homework, you realize, wow, man, it's all rigged. It's all stacked and rigged, and to have to be biased towards a certain side.
Yeah, of course. The media is horrible. Everyone knows that. But I think that on some level they know that they're horrible. Because everyone is flocking to YouTube, flocking to social media to see what's really going on, not just with this topic, but any given topic, because the media is on it. They just don't report anything fairly. Everything's an opinion piece or this kind of hit piece, and it's not based in the realm of reality. So, of course, people are flocking to other sources of information to get down to the bottom of what it is they want to know.
Right. It's interesting because it's like in this case specifically, there is just a little bit of like, I think there's what they say, the woke agenda in Hollywood and everyone who just sort of, they have to follow what Amber Heard says. And it's like, it's frustrating.
I think there's a staunch divide I would put a very large divider between Hollywood media, such as the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, whatever, and the actual working Hollywood.
Sure. But going back to the working Hollywood, I think there's just a lot of people who are just afraid to pick a side. Like I remember.
Oh, I don't think so.
You don't think? Well, because when Mads Mikkelsen did his response and took over for Fantastic. Yeah, when he took over for Fantastic Beasts, like he refused to pick a side. He's like, yeah, well, blah 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 blah. He did not want to be stuck picking a side because it seems like they're all just afraid to take a bet because they either haven't done the research or they don't want to be canceled themselves. And that's more of what I mean of just like it's frustrating this like fake, disingenuous Hollywood public personas where I'm sure behind the scenes a lot of them are like she's crazy or
Absolutely.
And that's
100%.
what's so frustrating.
It's so frustrating. Yes, I didn't realize that's what you meant. Yeah, absolutely. The public face that people put on is very off-putting sometimes, especially when you know sort of what other conversations have been. I mean, largely throughout town. Sorry, I'm trying not to say words that you don't want me to say.
I apologize for YouTube. By the way, it's a good time to remind everybody here, dear human reviewer, there's nothing we have said that has gone against our guidelines. I can't believe I have to constantly do that, but thank you for working within these parameters.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say largely throughout, if you're just casually chatting with people and something happens to come up, it's very obvious sides have been taken. Not hers. Yeah,
but so you're in the industry without naming names because it's there. It's not even though even though there's a little bit of like, no, you know what? Whatever, we should just say it. We're gonna let's expose it. But I get it. Some people don't want to do that in real life. But
it's not my place to say what someone else's opinion is.
But you can acknowledge in town because I know a few too. There's a lot of people who don't trust her or believe her, but they don't want to say it publicly.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the world we live in has become so frustrating in that of just I'm sick of it because it's like I'm curious your thoughts on this because like I think you've learned my story and some people are coming to know my story and it's like I made mistakes. I've never shied away from the mistakes I made, but I didn't make the mistakes that a lot of the media and a lot of my the people that came after me said. At the end of the day, what's really been what I try to champion for when I'm anti-cancel culture is this idea of like, look, if accountability still needs to happen. Like if someone
Yes.
has done something wrong, it's okay to call that out and prove it and say, look, I want you to take accountability for something bad you did. That's
Yes.
separate. And I think that's getting mixed up into this idea of a lot of people who have done bad are attempting to say, well, they're just canceling me. And it's like, it irritates me because people are actually canceled in this world we live in right now where I can share some examples. I've had some in this channel where one lie has just completely neutron bombed their entire careers, and no one wants to give them time of day again because they think they're toxic, when in reality they didn't really do anything. And then there's also people who I feel like, in me, I made some personal choices, right? And I made some mistakes in my career, but I wasn't the thing that everyone attempts to call me. But it's frustrating because I just feel like there's a lack of accountability that a lot of people want to take right now. That is another thing of like people are afraid to take accountability, or now they're afraid to demand accountability when it's actually something wrong because, then we can't be canceled. It's like I would, not to make it political, but I feel like there is more of a conservative side of people who are more forgiving and say, well, I don't want to cancel them. They have a different, whatever it is. But then I noticed some of those people I've talked to, and I didn't mean to label all conservative. I'm just saying, and some of the personalities and places I've known, they don't want, they're like, well, they're afraid to hit the accountability part of that too. Have you noticed any of that sort of in this sort of world we live in of movements and cancel culture, et cetera?
Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to what we were saying before of people not, realizing they were wrong, but they just can't own up to the mistake because they went so hard for so long, backing the wrong horse.
Right.
And I think it's important, to admit your mistakes. Obviously, as we just said, if something horrible were to come out that nuked this whole thing for Johnny, then we would be like, well, we were wrong.
Yeah.
And I just think it's an important piece of the puzzle to be able to say, and it shows a level of maturity also just to say, you know what, that was wrong. And the way that H went at everything, it was hard to not believe her because she, I can understand why the media went so hard and the way that things went down.
Sure. Especially the timing of it all, right? The timing was crucial.
You can understand why things happened the way they happened, and of course they want to believe this woman. But as evidence emerges and as all these things come to light, there's nothing wrong with saying, we didn't do this correctly. She duped us.
Right.
Which is exactly what she did. Yeah,
no, it's true. I think I think that's well said, because it's like, not to give her any credit, but it's like at the beginning of this, I think it is important we heard her out, right? You got to hear people out when they step forward. So I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't want to accept. Is another thing people sort of want to acknowledge. Well, no, I can't believe you until there's evidence. Sure, but we can still hear them out, right? And not condemn or say they're liars. Right. We have to also not condemn the person they're accusing because we don't know. And at the end of the day, usually both people, there's some accountability. In most cases, obviously, sometimes there's just wrong, but there's sometimes accountability on both sides, especially if it's around a divorce or a relationship. Mm-hmm. It's so personal and gets so emotional. Anytime it's like a public divorce or custody battle, I step totally back because I realize there's a lot of emotion in this that who knows who's telling the truth. They're both clearly affected. And so I tried to stay away from this one specifically because I thought, well, clearly this was bad. But when she came forward, I was like, damn, what's going on? And thank God for those tapes to really help, I think, inspire and get a lot of people to get on Johnny's side to really fight for him harder, because we got to hear the kind of person she was that I think you even alluded to. A lot of people in the industry sort of knew behind the scenes that was the type of character she was, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Her reputation precedes her. I think I tweeted this the other day, but her reputation precedes her in a not wonderful way.
Yeah. Well, and I think all of this sort of triggers why we are passionate and why it's important to stand up, as the topic here was, to not be afraid to speak the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are here to share our feelings on it. This is what we are become experts because we've really followed the information. You can follow us or not, but we can sort of direct people to sort of hear and follow the evidence to sort of make up their own mind. But I think it's important to pick a side, right? To make an opinion and to put yourself out there. Especially if you're going to be a personality or someone on Twitter who's attempting to comment and engage, like, have an opinion. It's kind of important. You may be wrong at times, but then make sure you take that accountability and own it up when you're wrong, because we all absolutely make mistakes. We're human. And I think that's the thing that I was just trying to make clear earlier. it's yes, we might be wrong, but right now, based off of everything we've seen, based off of the
Correct.
actual evidence, this
Yep.
man has been wrongfully, run through the coals.
Railroaded. Yeah, absolutely. By not just her, but her little gang of slugs as well.
Right. And the media and everything. I mean, the
Yeah.
Sun is an atrocious. They've been
Oh,
sued
atrocious.
countless
Yeah.
times, and it's embarrassing.
Abhorrent behavior there.
Yeah, and it's embarrassing that it's. Do you think it was a risk? Do you think he should have maybe not done it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, everyone will give their opinion, but knowing the evidence like we do, you sit and say, everyone expected it to be a slam dunk. No
Yeah,
one
but knowing
expected
how
it to lose.
corrupt and idiotic some other people are,
Yeah.
do
Well,
you
that's
think there
another
was, because it's like,
conversation.
I've had that debate where it's like, I believe him and I'm glad he's fighting for him. In fact, the fact that
Sure.
he's fighting to me makes me support him even more, because why would you risk
Of
all of
course.
this, right?
No, you wouldn't put yourself through this. No.
No, and there is a huge, massive risk. That's why I wonder, was it worth it? I hope someone gives him the benefit of the doubt today, so it inspires more people to speak the truth when they come forward. Because imagine,
yeah.
right? Imagine Amber Heard supporters who are watching this. Imagine if you're wrong and it was the other way around, and this guy now is gone because of that. Like that's why doesn't that give everybody pause to say, all right, let's really do more homework in this and make sure we're doing our best to make sure we have everything in mind before we make a decision.
No, absolutely agree. And the thing with the Sun case, I think, is twofold. I think that he saw it as his opportunity to really get this evidence out, because it was prior to her having printed that op-ed in the Washington Post, which obviously no one foresaw. So then he was able to sue her directly, which is obviously a much better set of circumstances for him.
Right.
But I think that that's how that went down. He saw an opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, he's taken every opportunity he's gotten, and he's putting his name on the line. He's putting everything on the line. And it's clear, because while it's a risk, and some people might say it wasn't worth the risk given how corrupt everything is and sort of how the people are, he's putting it all out there. And to me, again, that's a sign of someone who's innocent. If you are innocent, if you want to speak the truth, put it out there.
I agree. I think that we can opine however we want about whether it's a risk or not. At the end of the day, he feels like the risk is worth it, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and I would feel that way too. I mean, I can relate to that, being falsely accused of things that I didn't do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I was very adamantly wanting to put it out there, and I recall the person who was caught lying, adamantly trying to just keep hitting without any evidence of themselves, just to try and find any other thing that could sort of paint me in a negative light to make it seem like that accusation was also truthful. It's weird. I do think there's a certain person, these types of people, who get so set in becoming the hero in their own sort of narrative that they sort of believe the lies at a certain point. And social media and sort of the mob, community out there will sort of lift them up to a point where they sort of, I feel like, become unaware of reality. Have you noticed that too?
Yeah, absolutely. That it's this hunger for fame and fortune, and sort of the idea of doing it, just being able to claw up someone else's back who's been working for 30 years, breaking their necks to achieve what they've achieved. You're just always going to have people like that, freeloaders, grifters. It's just part of the game.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to have this conversation with you. Is there anything else you want to offer to the audience here watching, or suggestions? If anybody out there is wavering on, well, I don't really want to put myself out there to make a call in this, what would you tell them to sort of help them make that decision?
Honestly, you can't make anyone do anything, but I would just advise them to read all the court documents, read the evidence, listen to the tapes, and just really think long and hard about what it is that the evidence shows, and not to bring any kind of preconceived bias into it. Just listen and read, and I think everything will become abundantly clear. Whether you wind up making a public statement about it or not is really not that important. It's just important to understand what the situation is and that this is possible.
Well said. And I think it's also important to add separately, and you can add to this too, but on social media, I don't harbor anybody's want to be anonymous. I understand why some people would not want to put themselves out there, because Twitter especially is a terrible place, filled with, it's unpoliced and awful people out there just doing the worst to people. So I understand the want to do it, but if you're going to be a personality, if you want to be someone out there who's sort of trying to create a presence for yourself, you got to be genuine. You got to be not afraid to put it out there. That said, you can also completely keep yourself anonymous and uninvolved from these people. But I do think, it helps the cause if you're willing to say, look, this is me. I believe in this. This is what I'm saying. I think, Twitter as a whole, it would be better off if they actually forced people to identify themselves before creating accounts. Whether you choose to reveal that identity or not, I do think that sort of standard is something we should start demanding on our social media accounts, because it's one thing to be anonymous and sort of want to protect yourself because, personal things that have happened to you and you don't really want to be out there. It's another thing to be able to be so anonymous that you can just troll everybody and just be meanful, spiteful, hateful. And I think that's the sort of difference. So I understand it's a tough call. So I don't want to tell everybody, go show your face and go support this cause because sadly it's the Wild West out there and it actually could cause you some trouble. But I think at the same time, if you're the type of person who wants to be a personality, don't be afraid to. If you're out there with a channel and your face is already out there, don't be afraid to put your name behind a movement like this. Because the reality is, even if you're wrong, if something else comes forward to prove it, you can still correct yourself later. But then at least you stood by what you believed in.
And no one is ever going to fault someone for having just like with AH in the beginning. No one faults anyone for believing her in 2016, and no one is going to fault anyone for having believed Johnny Depp up to this point. If something else happens and we're forced to say, it looks like we were wrong again. As long as you step up and own those mistakes, there's nothing wrong with any of that.
Well said, and like I always try to say, and there's some other cases similar happening right now. I don't want to give them more airtime, but to me, it's like innocent until proven guilty is there for a reason. We have to make sure we actually follow through on that in this era of cancel culture and everything else, because sadly, as you said in the beginning, men and women both lie. Everybody is capable of lying. And so it's important to hear everybody that comes forward, but also allow the other person to come forward and share share what happened, their side of what happened. It's then up to us to sort of make those decisions. And then if something criminal happens or something else, and obviously there are paths they can proceed. But I think in this case, some will say, well, Johnny lost, but I think this has just begun. There's a lot more to come. So don't be afraid to speak up on this one just because you heard he lost he's losing the appeal. He lost the Sun case. No, there's still a lot more to this case coming. So be warned, be aware, do your research. Thank you, Jax, for joining me. Awesome conversation.
Thank you, Andy.
Best place to find you is still Twitter. Is that a good place to send people?
Yeah, Twitter's good. I have Instagram too, @JaxMakesMovies. That's it.
Sweet. And then don't forget to check out Day 13. This is, come on, Martin Cove's in it. You sold me.
We love Marty. Marty's awesome. Please go support him.
So he's not as crazy as he seems in Cobra Kai.
No, definitely not. Super nice guy, super nice family.
Is it fun watching him in Cobra Kai, knowing him personally? Like, oh man, he's so menacing and scary.
Oh yeah, the best is his son. The two of them together is just a crack up.
I'm very jealous. Well, there you go. If she knows Martin Cove, she's good to trust. So thank you for being here, Jax. Awesome conversation. Thanks to all of you who have been watching at home. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right there. Make sure you hit the bell to all alerts, because all the stories we tell here are important to get out there. So I appreciate all you guys who are watching. If you got a subject or guest you want me to talk about on this channel, leave a comment down below. Help the engagement of this channel. And thanks so much for watching here on Hugging the Cactus.